Hi everyone, welcome back to another Stay Creating tutorial with me, Amanda Love Santos. Today I'm going to show you guys how to crochet this Stella tank, which is a tank top made from granny squares. It's a simple design that fits amazing, and believe me when I say that it goes with everything. You can make it in a neutral color like the one I'm wearing here, or you can make it pop with all of your favorite colors. This is my summer staple and I know you guys are going to love it. So I'll be going over step by step how to make this top, but I'll also have the pattern available on my shop for those of you guys who prefer a written pattern. And while you're checking out my shop, make sure you subscribe to my newsletter to get your seasonal pattern freebie. Alright, now let's get into the tutorial. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using a light number 3 weight yarn and a 4mm hook. And I'll leave all the details and materials in the description. And this top is made out of triangles and squares. So we're going to start by making that first triangle that creates that V-neck. So we're going to start with a magic ring. If you've never made a magic ring, it's pretty simple. It's pretty much the same as a slip knot, except you do a chain at the end. And then we're going to crochet 2 more chains, which makes 3 chains, and those first 3 chains are going to count as a double crochet. Then we're going to add 6 more double crochets into this magic ring for a total of 7 double crochets. Once you have 7 double crochets, we can go ahead and tighten that ring, creating our first row. Then for row 2, we're going to chain 2. And then we're going to work a cluster of 2 double crochets into that first space. So you want to yarn over and do your first double crochet, but don't finish the last pull through. Then you're going to do your second one, don't finish, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through, creating a cluster. Then you're going to chain 2. Now into the next space, we're going to work a 3 double crochet cluster. So you're going to double crochet 3 times, but don't finish them until the very end, and then you pull through all 3. So you're going to continue that pattern of a 3 double crochet cluster, then chain 2, 3 double crochet cluster, all the way until you complete the row, and you'll have a total of 6 3 double crochet clusters. Then for row 3, we're going to start off with 4 chains, and then into that very first chain, we're going to treble crochet 2 times. And then into that next chain 2 space, we're going to double crochet 3 times. And then in the next chain 2 space, double crochet 2 times, and we're just going to continue that all the way across the row until we get to the 3rd chain 2 space. In that 3rd chain 2 space, we're going to treble crochet 3 times, chain 2, and then treble crochet 3 more times into that same chain 2 space. And then we're going to continue double crocheting 3 times in each space until the very last stitch. And then into the very last stitch, we're going to treble crochet 3 times. And that completes row 3. So that completes our first triangle. We're going to fasten off and make another just like it. But on the second one, we're not going to fasten off because from there we're going to connect the 2 triangles. So on the second triangle, once you finish row 3, you're going to chain 3 and then turn. And then we're going to double crochet twice into that first chain. And those first 3 chains will count as a double crochet, so it's 3 double crochets in that corner. And then you're going to skip 3 stitches and then chain 1, and we're going to double crochet 3 times into that space. We're going to do that for the next 2 spaces and then skip 3 more stitches, and then in the next chain 2 space we're going to double crochet 3 times, chain 3, and then double crochet 3 more times into that same chain 2 space. And I realized the camera got a little out of focus, but in a moment it'll refocus, and I'm going to show you guys everything that we just did. Then we're going to skip 3 stitches and double crochet 3 times into that space, and then do that 3 more times, and the last one should be done in that very last stitch. So this triangle that we just worked on, we're going to refer to it as triangle number 1, and then the other triangle that we had done before, we're going to refer to it as triangle number 2, just so we don't get mixed up. So we're going to take triangle 2 and place it alongside triangle 1. And we're going to connect that entire side. So we're going to start in that corner where we left off. We're going to work 3 double crochets into that very first stitch, that corner stitch of triangle number 2. And that's going to connect the 2 triangles in the corner, and then we're going to work a slip stitch into that next chain space of triangle number 1, and then that connects the triangle as well. And then we're going to skip 3 stitches of triangle number 2 and work 3 double crochets into that space, and then work a slip stitch into the chain space of triangle number 1, and then continue that pattern. Skip 3 stitches of triangle number 2, work 3 double crochets, slip stitch to triangle number 1, and we're just going to continue that along the side. Now once you get to the corner space, we're going to work 3 double crochets, then we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to do a slip stitch to that corner space of triangle number 1, then chain 1. Then we're going to do 3 more double crochets into that same space. So that creates the corner for triangle number 2. Then we're going to continue that same pattern of skipping 3 stitches, 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets, all the way into the very last stitch. So to complete that corner, we're going to chain 3 and then double crochet 3 times into that same stitch. Then we're going to continue that pattern of 3 double crochets, a chain, 3 double crochets, all the way across until we get to the next corner. Once you get to the corner, after you do the chain 1, you're going to double crochet 3 times into that seam space. And then you're going to chain 3 and then double crochet 3 times again into that seam space. And then you're going to pick up that same pattern that we've been doing of 3 double crochets, chain, 3 double crochets across until you get to that last corner. Then once you've done the last 3 double crochets in that corner, you're going to chain 3 and then slip stitch into that first double crochet that we started off with, and then you can fasten off. So now we've completed the first triangle that we need, and you're going to repeat that entire process to make another one. Then once you have 2 triangles, we're going to move on to creating the squares. So to create a square, it's essentially the same pattern, except it's a full round. Like instead of rows, it's actually rounds. So we're going to start off with a magic ring. And that magic ring, you're going to finish off with a chain to lock it into place. And then you're going to chain 2 more chains. So those first 3 chains are going to count as your first double crochet. And then we're going to double crochet 11 more times into that magic ring. So that gives us a total of 12 double crochets. Once you have that, then we're going to close the magic ring by pulling on that loose end. Then we're going to join the round by slip stitching into the top of the first chain 3 that we did. And then slip stitch into the space before the next double crochet. And that is going to end our first round. Moving on to the second round, you're going to chain 2. Then we're going to do a 2 double crochet cluster into that space from the previous round. And those first 2 chains are actually going to count as another double crochet. So that's going to count as our first 3 double crochet cluster. Then you're going to chain 2, and then into the next space, you're going to do a 3 double crochet cluster. Then you're going to chain 2 and then do another 3 double crochet cluster into the next space. And that's the pattern that you're going to keep all the way around until you finish the round. And once you make it all the way around, you're going to join the round with the slip stitch to the top of that first chain 2. And then slip stitch into the next space, and that's going to complete round 2. Now moving on to round 3, we're going to start off with 3 chains, and then you're going to double crochet twice into that space from the previous round. And that's going to count as 3 double crochets. Then into the next space, we're going to double crochet 3 times. And then in the next space, we're going to treble crochet 3 times. Chain 2 and then treble crochet 3 more times into that same space. And that's going to create a corner. And then we're going to double crochet 3 times into the next 2 spaces. And then we're going to create another corner with 3 treble crochets, 2 chains, and then 3 treble crochets. So we're going to continue that all the way around. Then when we get to where we started with those chain 3s, we're going to join with a slip stitch. Then we're going to fasten off, and that completes our first square. And we're going to need 16 squares total for the entire top. So you can go ahead and make those now. And then once you're done with those, we're going to start connecting the first row of squares. So the row is going to have 4 squares. So you want to take 4 of your squares, and we're going to start with the very first square. In the corner, we're going to start with a slip stitch and chain 3. And then in that corner space, we're going to double crochet twice. And those first 3 chains are going to count as a double crochet as well. So that's 3 double crochets total. And then we're going to do that same pattern that we were using when we were connecting the triangles. So we're going to chain 1 and then skip 3 stitches. And then in that space, we're going to do 3 double crochets. Chain 1, skip 3 stitches, and just continue that pattern until the corner. In the corner, same thing as before, we're going to double crochet 3 times, chain 3, and then double crochet 3 times into that same space. So by now I'm sure you guys already are familiar with this pattern, so we're just going to complete the 3 sides with that pattern. And we're going to leave the 4th side unfinished because this is when we're going to start to connect to our next square. So to connect to the next square, we're just going to place it side by side, and then we're going to start to double crochet 3 times into that corner space of the new square. And that's going to make a natural connection in that corner. And then instead of chaining 1, we're actually going to do a slip stitch into that chain 1 space of the previous square. So that is going to make another connection, and that's going to be basically like the pattern across this entire side, is just double crocheting 3 times into the next space of the new square, and then slip stitching into the chain 1 space of the previous square. And you can double check to make sure like the stitches are lining up with your 2 squares, and as long as it is, then you're good to go. You can just continue that pattern across until you get to the corner. Now in the corner space, you're going to double crochet 3 times, and then 1 chain, and then you're going to slip stitch into the corner space of the previous square, and then you're going to chain 1 and then double crochet 3 times into the corner space of the new square. Then we're going to go back to the previous pattern where we chain 1, 3 double crochets, chain 1, across the side, complete the corner, and then across the other side. Again, we're leaving the 4th side unfinished. We're going to come back to that once we connect all 4 squares. And you're just going to continue connecting the remaining 2 squares of this row the same way that we just did. So once you have the 4 squares connected, we're going to finish off that 4th side while connecting it to the 2 triangles that we did before. So we're going to start where we left off at the corner of our 4th square, and we're going to start connecting it to this first triangle. We're going to start with 1 chain, and then we're going to slip stitch into that corner of our first triangle. And that is going to connect the 2 in the corner. And then from there, we're going to chain 1 and then double crochet 3 times into that corner space of our square. And then you're going to find the next space on the triangle and slip stitch into that space. That's going to create a connection there. And then we're going to skip 3 stitches and then double crochet 3 times into the space of the square. And then you're going to continue a pattern of slip stitching into the space of the triangle, then double crocheting 3 times into the space of the square, and so on. Then once you get to the seam, and it's going to be 2 seams that match up from the 2 triangles and then the 2 squares. So after you double crochet 3 times into that corner space of the square, then you're going to chain 1, and then you're going to slip stitch into the top right corner of the triangle, and then you're going to single crochet into the seam between the 2 squares, and then you're going to slip stitch into the top left corner of the triangle, chain 1, and then double crochet 3 times into that corner space of the bottom left square. And that is the pattern that we're going to continue across as we're connecting the triangles to the squares. And once you make your way across, then you're just going to join it to those first 3 double crochets in the corner and just fasten off. So that connects our first 2 rows. So the 2 triangles are considered the first row. The 4 squares, that's considered our second row. And next, we're going to do the same exact thing with our third row of 4 squares. So you're going to create another row of 4 squares, and before you finish off that 4th side, that's when you're going to start connecting it to the second row. So this is what it looks like when you've completed the front panel with the 3 rows. Then we're going to create the back panel, which is just 2 rows of 4 squares in each row. You're going to connect that, and then that is pretty much the bulk of the work. Once you have the front and the back panels done, we're going to seam them together. We're going to connect the front and the back panels and add the straps. So we want our 2 panels with the wrong side facing out, and then we're going to work up the seam starting from the bottom corner. We're going to add some trim to the triangles, and then at the top of both triangles we're going to add straps. Now we're going to work our way down the next seam, and then we're going to add a round of trim to the bottom. We're going to start in that bottom corner with the seam by lining up those corner spaces, starting with the slip stitch, and we're just going to single crochet all the way up the seam. And then once you get to the triangles, we're going to add a trim of half double crochets. So you're going to half double crochet in each stitch except the chains. So the chain spaces, you're just going to skip them. And then once you get to that corner at the top of the triangle, we're going to half double crochet once into that space. And then we're going to start chaining for as long as you want your strap to be. For me, it ended up being about 40 chains. you're going to come back into that second chain from the hook and just start to single crochet. So we're going to single crochet in each chain all the way back to the top of that triangle. Then we're going to half double crochet into the same corner space that we started the strap in, and then we're just going to go back to the trim where we were doing half double crochets in each stitch besides the chains. And we're going to do that all the way across until we get to the next triangle, and then we're going to add a strap just like we just did, and then continue the trim until we get to the next seam. Once we get to the next seam, we're going to do the same thing that we did on the other side. So just single crochet down the seam, and then we're going to flip our work where the right side is facing you, and then we're going to add the trim of half double crochets to the bottom. And now the last thing to do is to add the trim to the back and attach the sleeves to the back. So we're just going to slip stitch here off of the edge of the triangle, and we're just going to start to half double crochet along the back. Now when you get to that first, or I guess technically it's the second seam between the first and the second square of the back panel, that's where we're going to attach our strap. So we're just going to slip stitch to the bottom of the strap, and then half double crochet into that seam space. And then slip stitch again into the bottom of the strap. And then you're just going to carry on and continue the trim. Do the same thing to the second strap, and then fasten off the trim once you get to the next where the triangle starts again. So that's about it, you guys. The last thing to do is to weave in all the ends. Hopefully you didn't wait to the end to do all that, but if you did, that's just how it goes. So that completes the tank top. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, I invite you guys to subscribe to the channel and become part of the Stay Creating community. And if you guys have any questions along the way, let me know in the comments. Hope you enjoyed the process and stay creating.